with a good program in place and somebody who knows what they're doing can really help bring revenue to the bottom line. You can set up free trade zones, getting back your import duties. I mean, I could go on.
Welcome to Simply Trade, brought to you by Global Training Center. My name is Lalo, and together with my co-host Andy, we have well over 60 years of combined trade, logistics, and supply chain experience. Along the way, we have seen and witnessed different challenges in trade compliance. We decided to put the show together and call on our friends and colleagues in the business to hang out with us and share their knowledge in all things trade. Thank you for spending some time with us. Enjoy the show. Been about a couple of weeks since we came back from ICPA, and what a good experience that was.
That was fantastic. I tell you what, that was the good thing about that was that the ICPA Fall Conference, for those that are listening, is where we attended. We were down in Grapevine, Texas, which is Dallas, the Dallas-Fort Worth airport area. And the attendance level was back to pre-pandemic times. It was they had right at 300 people in attendance, which was the norm. And of course, because of the pandemic, people are used to doing a lot of virtual. They had almost 100 folks virtually on that fall conference, but man, was that good. That was just it was good seeing everybody. And
Stop, you're making me jealous. I couldn't go. I missed it. The pictures, the interviews, everything was great. I was so jealous.
So that brings us to our guest is Darie, who everybody knows. Achstein, everybody knows, and she's always at the conferences, and she couldn't go this year, but that's who you heard there in the background. Well, the one, yeah.
It's like, we got to go. Listen, Darie, we missed you. You would have loved it. It was one of those things where, again, going in, there were about half the conference, I think, were a good 40 to 50% were first-time attendees.
That's
However,
awesome. There
was a lot of good old friends, and lots of good hugs and catching up and all of that, and hey, the food was pretty good too. So
it was pretty darn good.
I can wear pants that I haven't worn pre-pandemic, so maybe that was the only reason it was a good thing I wasn't there.
Well, I will say this. Hey, I have for all this, and Lalo and I have been talking about trying to get ourselves, don't we all? We all try and get back in shape. And you go to one of these conferences and you go, wow, you've really, done something. And then the other, you're going, oh boy, pandemic has not been good to you.
Yeah, maybe that's why I'm holding out till March, so I can, start training now for that marathon.
Well, I wound up. No, there you go. I wound up. I've gone from 255 pounds down to I was 216 before we hit that conference. And
wow.
Man, when I got home, I think I gained 10 pounds or something with all the food we were eating. So it was great times. But
good.
Hey, Lalo, the thing we were talking about, I think you were talking about walking in and where everybody knows you, it's friendly or whatever. What was the...
Well, that's the reason I brought up the ICPA conference was because it's funny how one of the common themes that I kept on hearing, especially from first-timers, was they're actually at a place, at a venue where people actually know what the heck they're doing and what they're talking about. Their deal was, it's not like talking to my other coworkers in the company and they're just like, you're the person that always says, no, we can't bring this in or whatever. So I don't know. That's the reason I brought it up. And that's kind of like the theme of our show today, so that we can get that started. It's kind of like that show from Cheers. Everybody knows your name. You walk in and everybody loves you and knows you there. And that's what pretty much the ICPA was. And it leads on good segue into this episode with Darie.
My husband always says whenever I go to those conferences, he goes, "Are you excited about going to Nerd Fest? Because nobody else knows what it is you
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about or what you're doing. I'm like, are you kidding me? I start packing, I start packing 3 months in advance. I'm like, yay, somebody knows what I do. It's so exciting. I could talk
I
trade
love
nerds.
that. I don't think
I could talk trade nerds.
Nerd Fest or
Yeah.
Trade Nerds. Yeah, there you go.
Well, I always laughed. I always had to laugh because when my daughter was, I don't know, second or third grade, they had one of these career days, right, where you bring your parent in and you describe what you do, right? So she comes home and she's like, Mom, career days next week. And of course, I got all nerded out and excited. I was going to bring a big map of all the places I've traveled to and places I've shipped stuff to. And I'm thinking, we can get a big map and put cargo ships on this side of the Atlantic and this and that. And I'm like, oh, honey, it's going to be so cool. I'm going to do like a big presentation. And she looked right at me. She goes, is Dad off that day? He works for the fire department.
Boy, talking about taking the wind out of yourself.
I mean, seriously, what you want the guy who saves lives versus the lady who gets stuff to where it needs to go. Whatever. Go clean the bathroom. Go clean the bathroom.
The person that delivers your Christmas gifts.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
Darie, let me ask you a question.
Yeah, please.
All right. Just like we could chit chat on because we've been friends for so long, but as far as in dealing with your compliance and all that, how would you like to see upper management approach your compliance thing so that it is, even just asking questions on something? What would be the ideal way for an executive to try and find out what's going on from a supply chain and or compliance perspective?
Wow, that's a good one. Well, let's face it. Between the three of us, we've probably been doing this over 200 years. So, I mean, I don't know about you all, but
and I'm the one that's probably 150 of that.
All right, I'll take about 45 years of that. So let me just start by saying one thing I love about what I do is talking to people about how they fell into what we do. I don't think I've ever met anybody who ever goes, oh, when I was in 8th grade, I totally wanted to grow up and be in international trade. Like, it's like, okay, let's face it. There's nothing sexy about it. Okay. Let's just.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I got to tell you that I agree with that. And Lalo and I had a young fellow. We were interviewing different people and everybody was like, I fell into it. It was an open spot. It was a promotion. I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and grab it. I don't know what I'm doing. Whatever the case may be. And we had one young guy that he looked like he was just right out of college or something. And he actually said, oh, man, I'm in a great position. He said, this is what I've always wanted to do. And I'm thinking, my jaw dropped open. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? So I will say I have had one answer now of somebody saying that's what I've always wanted to do.
So in the 150 years you've been doing this, Andy, you have one person.
Right.
There you go. No,
progress. That's called progress.
Yes, progress. Wow. The next generation.
And it happened in 2022.
Well, I'm done with this interview. I'm out.
There you go.
No, it's so funny. I love that. Well, you know what? Then I would call that progress beyond leaps and bounds, because I would say most people, well, no, I would say everybody, because I have not had that experience, that does what we do has fallen into it, right? Like, and I don't think that people really start in international trade per se, right? They started maybe working on the warehouse. They started on the shipping area.
Being a runner for a customs office.
Right? Like you name it.
All they know is they're pushing paper. They're lifting boxes and putting them away. They're doing inventory or something, right. I
mean, I fell into it actually as an intern in college. A friend of mine, her dad worked in aerospace, and where I grew up in Southern California, there was really two places you went. You either worked in the aerospace industry, right? And in the El Segundo area, there were a lot of Boeings and Raytheons there in Long Beach, or you went down to the ports, right? You worked in Long Beach, or you worked in San Pedro port. And it was funny because this place that I was interning at, she did not like it. She did not like working with the shipping documentation and so forth. And for some reason or another, I just kind of gravitated to it. I thought it was kind of a puzzle. And it was funny too, because I was, just this like young kid, totally green behind the ears. And these old guys would invite me to go to lunch with them. And that's where I started learning about, certain pieces of technology. I learned about ITAR. I mean, I could go on. And the only reason they ever invited me to lunch was because I was the only one sober enough to drive them back. Okay. So, hey, we all start our career path somewhere, right? And I'm not sure they have those 2.5 hour martini lunches anymore, but I'm telling you, on those Friday afternoons, those were some of the best conversations I heard. Probably stuff I probably shouldn't have heard, but I heard.
Oh, well, but you know what? I mean, you're hitting on something that in particular, some of the more senior or tenured, I'll put it that way, more tenured employees that have been around a while, man, just sitting and listening to it and getting them to tell stories about the situations they've been in. Because the one thing that I have always told folks, you enjoy a win or a success, but you learn from a failure. And in that, almost all of us have gotten thrown something our way, and we've probably screwed it up. We've probably wound up like, or it's a big mess. Somebody messed up, and you're trying to figure out, how am I going to clean this thing up, and go through. But you learn from that.
Well, so to add to that point, I think, again, going back to people have kind of fallen into this by accident. There was a woman I ran into. So I used to do some teaching with global trade, right? With Lalo and his team. And I loved that. It was so much fun. And I'll never forget this woman. I would always, whenever I would start those classes, I would always go around the class and ask people, give me your title. How long have you been doing what you're doing? And how did you fall into it? And one of my favorite stories was this woman. She was a stay-at-home mom for many years. And as her kids got older, she decided to go back to working part-time in the mornings, answering the phones for, this small company that received goods from overseas, like most companies, right? And so she was the person who would answer the phones, and she would sign all like the FedEx slips and the UPS slips, the carrier slips when they would come in. Well, so it turned out she had been on the job maybe 3 to 5 months, and it was a small company, and they got an audit. They got a CF-29 from customs about an import, right? And then all of a sudden it was ignored, and it turned into an audit. So the owner of the company was notified, and they said, you need to designate somebody to handle this. Like, who's going to be the point person, right? Thinking it would probably be him. No, he gave it to this poor gal who was answering phones. And so he sat her down and explained, I need you to be the point person on this. And she goes, what are you talking about? I'm here like 4 hours a day answering the phones. I'm here from 8 to noon, right? And he goes, well, aren't you the person who signs the FedEx slips? Aren't you the person who signs all the goods coming in? And she's like, yeah, but that's just part of my job. I'm just accepting packages. He goes, well, when you sign that, you're accepting the responsibility to receive our goods that are coming in. And honestly,
oh my stars.
Yeah. So that's how she got involved. And this poor woman, I mean, it was a great story. That was probably the first 20 minutes of class, and we were laughing so hard. Some guy goes, you can't be serious. She goes, why would I lie about that? Like, that's not even like, again, that's not like a sexy story that I'm trying to tell you here. But so it turned out that the owner of the company took it very seriously, because, there was things breathing down his neck, and he started sending her to all kinds of classes for education. The company grew. She grew into that spot and learned. I mean, it was a hardcore crash course of international trade. Right. And so by the time I met her, it was probably a couple of years into what she was doing. She was actually looking to change jobs, because now that she had this experience under her belt, and I think that this is one of the major takeaways, if you take nothing away from this conversation, is that if a company is willing to put some education into you, if you can gain some knowledge, especially from an international perspective, I don't care if it's international shipping, international marketing, anything that says international or global, you're golden. That, I mean, because that's the world that we live in, right? I mean, especially even though, what we decide that we've been, between two of us, 290 years here. I don't know about you guys, but e-commerce was not a part of my repertoire when I started in this business, right? And now we have e-commerce, and with our friends in the younger generation, they don't know any better. What do you mean I have to go to a brick and mortar and go buy something? I'm just going to go on Amazon, right?
Right.
Right. Like I have a daughter who just started college, and we just kind of laugh because she's like, oh, I need a bedspread, or I need decorations for my dorm. And I'm like, okay, well, when I come back out there, I'll take you to Target. She goes, oh no, I already ordered it from Amazon. Like, that's the world that they live in. It just shows up at their doorstep.
Well, and I got to tell you, for us in the early days of e-commerce, you would try and do that and go online, but then, there was some fraud going on or some shady things or whatever, or they couldn't handle it. And, that's when you were looking to say, well, if I'm going to order something from an e-commerce perspective, order it online, I want whoever I'm buying it from to have a brick and mortar store, so that if there's a problem, I'm going to go get face to face with somebody. The scenario here of what you're talking about there is, man, like you said, the stories that lady could tell, and she grew into the position. The other thing is the support she got from her boss. Her boss actually almost threw her under the bus. I mean, it was just like, here you go. You got a bus that's full tilt coming at you with customs on this audit. I want you to handle it and stop that bus. He was like, yeah, right. However, it sounds like that owner was also loyal to her in getting her trained and sticking with her as time goes on, which is, I salute the owner on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sound like a broken vinyl. Was that, there you go. But I have to say, I mean, you both know, I've spent the majority, 95 to 99% of my career in technology, and 23 mergers and acquisitions. Yes, I said that out loud, and I can name every company. And let me start with saying, I don't think it's because I'm a bad employee. The companies just keep getting bought. Okay. But one of the things I love about having all that experience, and people kind of, give me this look like, oh God, that how can you change that much? Well, the best part about all that change is I got put into doing different positions, especially in supply chain. I worked as a buyer.
Right.
I've worked as a planner. I was an ISO auditor off and on for 10 years. I've reported into all kinds of different departments, everything from supply chain management to finance to legal. For a short time, I worked as an IP paralegal. That was hit or miss. Well, that's a whole nother segment we could talk about. But the whole point of sharing that is, having worked with IT directly, having worked with engineering services, in my world, I need all those folks for what I do today. And I feel so blessed to be able to say that I've worked as a buyer and I've worked as a planner and all these other, things. I mean, I even at one point was working as a kidder. Where am I going with this point? Is, you can't just pigeonhole yourself to say you're an international trade, right? I mean, right. I love this position because you can make it what you want it to and really branch it out. Really, really get to know the people that work on the shipping floor, because as you can go make the best product in the world. And I always have to remind people, especially at the senior level and people within sales and marketing, they get upset because the people in shipping haven't got their product out. Well, hold on a minute. There could be a variety of reasons why they didn't get that out. And you might make the greatest product in the world, but if it doesn't get shipped out, you're not going to see the revenue, right?
Right.
And so I really appreciate this job because it touches all the way from the top, all the way down to the folks that are working to get the stuff out the door. And that's my favorite part about it. And this position, with a good program in place and somebody who knows what they're doing, can really help bring revenue to the bottom line. You can set up free trade zones, getting back your import duties. I mean, I could go on.
See, I was going to touch on that because, Darie, one of the things that I see, if Now, I want to talk at the executive level. One of the things at this is that if you have at the C-suite or a senior executive that understands the compliance function, they would also, it's like having a unbelievable resource of in one area that could tell you, hey, which of our vendors are high maintenance, which ones are producing good quality items. If their paperwork is substandard as far as the quality of information, I guarantee you they've got other problems in there. That's just one of the symptoms. Which are the ones that respond timely? Where are our problems? What about our IT systems? Is the data flows running through you? From a compliance, you run through so many different things, and you touch on customer service, you touch on purchasing, you touch on, the logistics and the transportation and all those things that an executive ought to be looking at, and especially whoever's the officer of that. But I mean, if I were looking at it from an operations perspective, I want to go talk to those compliance people and say, tell me where the exceptions are. Tell me who's your thorn in your side. And you're going to find out that, whatever a department may be, there's going to be, we'll go dig into that a little bit more and find out that maybe there's a group that needs to have a change in there, or a reorg or something. But would you agree with that as far as being a potential resource for an executive from what's going on within the company?
I want to be that resource. I mean, that's one of my goals always is, depending on where I end up, I do want to be that resource. I want to be, and I think that this isn't just because I'm a people pleaser by nature, but I feel like if you're going to pay me to come in and help advise, because in my humble opinion, this is a position that is an advisory position. I am not a decision maker by any means. I don't make decisions for the business. The business has to make those decisions on which way that they want to run their company, et cetera. But if you're going to come to me and say, we're looking to, for example, open up a trade lane in Hong Kong, and we're potentially looking to work with this channel partner and this distribution partner, and we need to move the goods in there. We don't have a registered entity in that country. I mean, I could go on, right? The list.
Right.
I feel vindicated as somebody that does what I do when I have somebody from the senior management team come and say, we need your help. Can you help us? Can you help us do the research? If I can get that kind of response from senior management and that kind of ask, that tells me a couple things. One, the senior management team trusts what I'm doing and the experience that I have behind me to advise them properly. Again, I'm not a decision maker, but if I can lay out the facts for which they are, good or bad, right? Because you don't hire this position to be a yes person. You don't hire this position to say, yeah, we can go do that. You hire this position to say, look, here's what we can do under the guidelines that you have set up, right? You have this idea of grandeur. I respect it, but here's some of the challenges you may come up against, right? And I'll leave it at that. I mean, we could make all kinds of scenarios and could talk about that for hours. So I have a freshman in college, so I'm going to pretend I'm talking to her. Okay. Because this is probably the advice that I am trying my best to give her. I would say learn to be much more open-minded. Listen to people. And really try and understand the world around you. I think it's really interesting because, and the reason I mentioned my daughter is because talking to the 21-year-old me is so much different than talking to a 21-year-old today. Mm-hmm. In the instance that today is about the ends, and I mean, I was only 21 6 years ago. No, so no, but I think, right now everything is instant gratification. right? Like we talk about shipping. You know, like I said, I mentioned my daughter. She's like, oh yeah, well, I need this for my dorm. So I went online and I ordered it. And I have to, you know, I have to say to her, well, do you realize how long it took to get there? Do you realize how many people had to touch that in order to move that? And she's like, I don't care. I got it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not that thought process behind it. So
Mm-hmm.
talking to the 21-year-old self in me and to her, I would say, and my mom and dad have always said this, step back and smell the roses. Like, take it all in before you jump. And I really, really wish I had learned that sooner instead of just jumping in full force. Take
Right.
a step back. It's okay. And look around you. So I don't know. Did I
Nice.
take your
That
did I take that question and really
No, that's good.
That's good.
But that's a really good way to wrap up the show, though. Thank you. I mean, that, I don't know, Andy, did you have something else?
No, I think this is excellent. Again, it's that networking, meeting people, and when you meet somebody and you're talking with them, you got to listen to them. What's their story? What's going on? What's got them at this point? Are they going through a challenge that you might be able to listen and, you know, offer some advice? Sometimes you just need to listen and say, hey, you know what? I don't know what to tell you, but I got my hand on your shoulder and I'm right there with you.
Well, I like, and then the beginning of this conversation, one of my favorite things that we talked about is how, you know, you go to these conferences, ICPA, you know, whatever, or the, you know, FTA, whatever whatever the organization may be. We're always blessed to be able to go to those things. But it's so nice. And as my husband has said, he calls it Trade Nerd Fest. Like, I get so excited when I go to those things and start packing weeks in advance because I know I'm going to meet people that even understand what I'm talking about. So if I can find 2 or 3 people that I gel with and that get it, and I can reach out to them, again, i.e. both of you, I've reached out to you on a multitude of occasions for different questions. We all know Deep, bless his heart. Deep is a dear friend, and I've reached out to him. He lives in the Silicon Valley, and I've worked in the Silicon Valley and traveled back and forth. And to maintain friendships like that and so forth, and to tap into those resources mean everything. And I think that that's true regardless if it's international trade or not. I think that that's just true in any arena that you work in.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading.